Thank you for listening to the Speaking Out on Sex Abuse podcast with hosts Clara and Jimmy Hinton. If you're new to the podcast, please look us up on your favorite podcast app, subscribe, like, and share so that you never miss an episode. If you'd like to further support us, visit patreon.com/speakingout and check out the different rewards. You'll find exclusive rewards if you sign up as a patron of the podcast. Thank you for your support, and let's get into the show. Welcome to this week's podcast. Thank you to our patrons who make the podcast possible. If you would like to become a patron of the podcast and help support us and keep the podcast going, visit patreon.com/speakingout. Look at the different tiers and different options that we have and find out what best suits you. And for the price of $5 a month, which is basically a cup of coffee, although that price is going to be in the rear view mirror here pretty soon.
How about it?
You can support us monthly and get some benefits as well. So thank you to our patrons. We love you guys, and we're glad that you help make this podcast possible and keep it going. We are going to continue our discussion on the 20 fruits that Mom and I came up with to help you identify who the wolves are. These are specific to child sexual predators, and we've covered, I think, 7 so far. We're going to cover 5 more in this episode until we're finally through with all 20 of them. So if you missed the previous couple episodes, I would highly recommend going back and getting the backstory to how we started this and how to use it. So we'll just jump right in and talk about the fruit of moral policing. Again, it's important to keep in mind that all of these fruits on the outside are fruits that you and I do. They're meant to be appealing. They're meant to be to at least appear to be wholesome. They're things that all of us need. And so on the outside, the abusers provide that. And then on the inside, they know that nobody's kind of dissecting this fruit and looking inside. And so on the inside, they can basically do whatever they want and be as rotten as they want. And that's how they blend in so well with the rest of us.
These wolves are true scam artists. They are true deceivers. They are truly evil. I mean, when I think of all the descriptions of the wolf, they're sly, they're sneaky. They have every trick up their sleeve that we can think of in order to make the exterior appearance seem wholesome, good, pure, while the inside is planning, deceiving, manipulating, and just doing evil actions. So that's what we're talking about here when we're talking about cracking open the fruit. What looks good on the outside isn't always good on the inside.
Right, and we can't take things at face value.
Right.
And I'm not really, I guess the saying, you can't judge a book by its cover, I guess is kind of an important saying, because that is true. A lot of times we just look at the cover, or we look at the outside, we look at the facade, and it's so easy for people to develop a facade and look really crisp and put together, and they're not. And so that saying kind of works both ways,
Right. And
it's important to look a little deeper.
Excuse me. When we see a person interacting and doing good works, it's hard to think of them other than being that kind, good, generous, pure person.
And I think that's why we feel bad about it. We're like, well, maybe I'm just overreacting, and because this is such a nice person and everybody else loves and adores this person.
Exactly.
Am I the only one who, gets this weird feeling? And so we talk ourselves out of it.
Exactly right.
And so this, this is meant to give you really tangible things to look at and say, all right, here's some concrete indicators. Here's some boundaries that are being crossed. So we'll start with this one, moral policing. All right, this is one that I think is important. I mean, it's exactly what we're doing right now, right? We are morally policing, saying there are bad people out there.
Right.
That's not a bad thing. Moral policing is not a bad thing. But here's where it gets a little bit tricky, and here's what the abuser does. So I'm just going to read right from this. The wolf finds ways to talk bad about others usually people that we're close to, and usually people he suspects would catch on to him. So this is strategic. This isn't
Exactly.
like he sees people who, who are kind of bad people, or, they have bad habits, and he's going to kind of single them out. This is really strategic. Really, really, really strategic. And that's why it's important when you hear moral policing, jot down the names of people
Right.
and say, all right, am I seeing a pattern here where it just happens to be all of my closest friends are really
Right.
terrible people,
Right.
according to this person?
The wolf studies people.
Yeah.
And we have to remember that they are crafty, they are really wise in studying the thoughts and actions of people. They know our weaknesses because they've studied them. And if I plant a seed in you that, Jimmy, your wife isn't quite being truthful. I've seen her at Starbucks, but and then plants a seed of suspicion in you, you're going to focus on your wife, not on the wolf.
Right. That's right.
And,
That's right.
And that's exactly what the wolf wants to happen.
And it creates a lot of division between you and the person who they're morally
Yes.
policing, who happens to be a really good friend or family member of yours.
Right.
It creates this anxiety, this division, this confusion, this ambiguity. All of these tools that are every single one of these is stacking. It's stacking in favor of the abuser. So here's how it works. The put downs are framed in a way that the wolf is, in a subtle way, morally policing others. Less skilled pedophiles are obvious with the put downs. So they're just going to put it out there.
Yeah.
Highly skilled pedophiles, however, frame it in a way where their listener identifies with the wolf.
Right.
All right? He's very subtle and calculated in how he frames the put downs. Ironically, he or she, the abuser, that is becomes really good at breaking rules. That's the irony in it. They're actually the ones who are breaking rules and doing things that are just so stinking questionable, while they're morally policing others and for much more minor things and saying, something's just not right with that person. He may migrate to Bible stories where people were rule breakers, where people thought outside of the box, etc. So when called out on breaking the boundaries or rules, he becomes apologetic and will always say, well, I didn't know that I wasn't supposed to do that.
Your dad was a master at this. When I think
Yeah.
back on, he would never directly come out and say something bad about a person, but
He was very skilled at it.
he was
at the
very
put downs.
skilled at it. I'm thinking of one preacher in particular, and you probably know who it is, the family that came. I think they would have caught on to him very quickly.
Yeah.
But your dad shed such a light of questions on that family, who probably was a super, super good family.
Yeah.
Truly. That the entire church ousted that family for no particular real reason except that your dad was shedding this light on. And now I've thought about that hundreds of times. I think they would have caught on to his actions
Yeah.
far before any of us would have.
Yeah.
Far before.
Yep.
But he was a master at this moral policing.
Yeah, very strategic at getting them
Very,
out. And,
very.
the likability factor is really strong, too. And that works both ways, too. Again, I'll plug Robert Cialdini's book called, let me think about this. It's the six principles. Now I have to look it up. I always hate that when I go to think
and
of
I'm
something.
terrible about remembering book names.
Robert Cialdini, it's spelled Cialdini. Good, strong Italian name.
Yes, it is. Woohoo.
Yeah, it's called Influence the Psychology of Persuasion. Phenomenal book. Phenomenal book. And he talks about one of the 6 principles is this likability factor. Abusive people will say, I like you. He said those 3 words have so much power over other people. When you just say, I like you.
It makes you feel good.
That's right.
It makes you feel accepted.
Yep.
It makes you feel bonded
Yep.
to that person.
And so interestingly, what they're doing is they're using the likability factor in both directions. And so they'll say it to, their victims and the victims' parents and caregivers or whatever. They'll use the likability factor and say, I really like you. That is an intoxicating power over that person. Yes. But the reverse of that is true. Saying, I don't really like this person. Mm-hmm. We identify with that.
We sure do.
Especially when there's moral policing involved.
Exactly. And when that doubt is placed in our minds, we focus on that, don't we? Mm-hmm. We will find every shred of anything we can to create facts around that doubt that has that seed of doubt that's been planted. And the wolf is masterful at this. We need to remember that.
Yeah. This next one, accomplishments. In my office at the church building, as most people have, doctors, dentists, pastors, teachers, hangs my accomplishments. Right?
Yeah.
It's not bragging rights. It's just one thing for me. Mostly it's decoration because my walls were pretty plain Jane. But I have my 2 diplomas, and then I won an honorary award when I went to seminary. That plaque hangs on the wall. It's not bad to share accomplishments.
Well,
now, it's bad when we kind of brag on them, and take that to an extreme, but accomplishments are okay, and especially telling people, I'm proud of you for what you accomplished, right? On the outside.
Right. When you put those accomplishments up, Jimmy, if it's done the right way, it's for identification.
Right.
I want to see, does my doctor have the degree?
Right, exactly right. Yeah, it's not that he's bragging about what med school he went to.
Is this nurse truly certified?
That's right.
Is the teacher certified?
Is the pastor certified?
Is the pastor certified? We want to know those things. So in that respect, yes. Mm-hmm. But there's a difference here.
So here again, I'll read right off of what we wrote here. At the same time, he's tearing the characters of others apart through this moral policing. Mm-hmm. He's building his own up by talking about all the kind things he does for others, especially children. And though we would normally view this as arrogance, the wolf is able to come off as being humble, kind, and benevolent. Again, all very, very, very strategic. They know how to push that line just enough where they don't sound cocky and arrogant.
Right.
And you're going to be like, wow, my goodness, like he has 11 children and he has all these grandchildren and they're just the apple of his eye. And they're, and he's so good at taking care of them and he's so good at caring for his family and he's so good at caring for others. Right. What's interesting is that's not based on observation as much as it is based on his telling you that he's good at it.
Yes. And it's played up so big. When I think of how these wolves do, they're so sly with sliding in their bragging rights.
Yeah, but done in a way that really genuinely sounds humble.
Well, you feel like you're in the presence of someone absolutely wonderful because look at this person, look at what all they do, and they're so humble about it. They very shyly tell you, well, I
don't want to brag,
right?
But
I was with so-and-so while they breathed their last breath. Mm-hmm. I volunteer at church camp 4 weeks out of the summer. I give that up so that I can be with the kiddos and teach them about God. I do all these private Bible studies that nobody really knows about. I'd be so thankful and grateful to study with you.
Yeah.
Or if your children,
that's exactly right.
If your children need help understanding the Bible, I've taught the Bible on so many levels. I know I could make it come alive for your child. We suck this up.
Yeah.
We believe it.
And that's the very next line here. I mean, what you said here, this becomes the resume for the offender.
Right.
People view his past history with children with all the accomplishments and begin to recommend him as a babysitter for their friends. This is The absolute thing that I have chills right now thinking about this. I know people who said, "My God, I handed other people's kids to your dad," and was like, you need to send your kids with this guy's amazing. He's almost miraculous with kids. He didn't even need to work to get the kids at that point. People were literally handing their babies to him saying, here, they can't wait to go hang out with you.
The truth of the matter is he was good with kids. He was patient. He was kind. He was funny. He was all of that, but he also was molesting them.
Yeah. Which is the last sentence. Beware of people who spend alone time with children and brag about it to others.
Right. That is always a critical red flag. That doesn't mean that everybody who volunteers time with children, other children, is a wolf, a pedophile, a molester. No. Beware, this is a red flag. Combine it with a lot of these other fruits.
That's right. I was just going to say, combine that with the moral policing where they're going around talking about how bad other people are.
Right.
And they're talking about all of their accomplishments at the same time. That is, to me, that just screams this person
It'll blow up the red flag.
This person is shady as crap,
You need to watch. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, the next one, protection. Again,
Yeah.
the whole purpose of this podcast is to protect children and innocent people. On the outside, protection is good. On the inside, how do you cut this open and find out if it's poisonous? Well, the wolf will describe a need to protect kids. Again, this possessive, persistent language. Possessiveness and persistence are the two words that you really, really, really need to be aware of. He describes a need to protect kids. Even in all the work that we do, at the end of the day, I lay my head down on the pillow at night and I go to sleep.
We've done what we could do.
That's right. I don't ever talk about this need. I just need to be protecting all these little children. I do what I can do.
Right.
I exhaust myself usually, and at the end of the day,
prayerfully we do what we can do.
We collapse.
And then at the end of the day, you're right. We ask God to just bless what we've done and take it from there. We
and
don't
rely
have
on
this
other people
driving
too.
force to one-on-one conquer.
That's right.
Every child.
Everything we do is in community with other people, other advocates, other parents, other teachers, law enforcement, on and on and on and on. This is not a one-pony show, you know?
Right. And I think that's important for us to remember about this protective one. It really is.
Very next sentence.
Yeah.
Wolves feel as if they are the only ones qualified to do so. They will oversell their desire to protect kids. They, quote-unquote, hate abuse. But they're not specific in how abuse brings harm to children.
Right.
Some even talk about how they hate child molestation. But when asked how it specifically hurts the kids, they can't clearly articulate it. And this is important. If somebody's talking to you about how I just hate abuse and child abusers ought to be locked up and, and hung and
killed,
shot, put on an island, whatever. Ask this question to those people. Say, all right, clearly you have strong feelings against abusers. What harm does this bring to the children that generates such strong emotions?
Right.
What is it specifically, not about the abuser, but about that child? What is it about that kid, the harm that kid endures, that makes you this animated about abuse?
And
abusers cannot answer this question.
I think that's so important, Jimmy. And had you and I known about how to crack open these fruits, we would have cracked the code so much quicker in our own family.
Yep.
It would have been so much easier to identify the rotten fruit.
Yeah.
And instead, we had people all around us saying, John he is such a great person. He's raised 11 kids. He has all these grandchildren, and yet he still has time to spend with my child. He still has time to study the Bible with my child. He still has time to drive 3 hours to babysit my child. And we were not aware of this protection, this driving force
Yeah.
where it was all about he was going to do this for all these children. He. Not only him, think of the abuse that you know about. Think of the abusers and put it into, it's like fitting puzzle pieces together. It soon begins to make this path that shows you the pathway to the abuser's mind. You can
Yeah.
follow it. You
Absolutely.
can absolutely
And you can see what they're
follow
up
it.
to. And I think
Right.
that's the importance of this tool is just taking a step back. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
when I say detaching your emotions, I mean, take a serrated knife and sever
Yeah.
every emotion that you possibly can, good and bad. Completely distance yourself emotionally from that
Right.
person and say, let me jot down what they're actually doing.
Exactly.
Maybe they're
Exactly.
pure in their intentions, maybe they're not. But a picture does begin to emerge.
It
And you
does.
start to say, holy cow.
Yep.
Like,
For good
This-
or bad, once you
That's
use
exactly
these
right.
guidelines, and I like how you presented this, Jimmy. These are not, something that says, "Okay, follow 1, 2, 3, and you're going to have it." These
Yeah,
are
it doesn't work that
guides.
way.
These, but a picture will begin to form
yeah.
clearly.
So along with this protection one, again, they can't specifically articulate how abuse hurts and harms children. So then they'll turn and they'll start drawing attention to the fact that the kids they aim to protect have probably been abused in the past.
Yes.
That's a huge red flag. If that's their answer to how does abuse harm children, well, I think that not these.
Right.
I think that my little ones have
Right.
probably been abused in the past, and my
Yes.
heart just kind of aches for them, and I don't really have any clear evidence, but I just have the feeling that there's abuse in their past. If that's their answer to how does another abuser harm this child, that's a massive red flag. So in this regard, the wolf is painting himself as the great protector of the very child he's about to abuse. And again, persistence, always persistence. He won't stop.
No. Nothing. No.
The next fruit, shelter. Again, all these things are necessary for life. Shelter. We need to provide shelter for our kids, for homeless children. We've got to get them out of the elements and provide shelter for them. So here's where it gets a little bit weird. The need to provide shelter is ever present with the wolf.
All the time.
He will either take stray kids into his home, or he will fantasize or vocalize, or both, his desire to do so. He obsesses about sleepovers, but only with children. Interestingly, they don't have their friends, their adult guy friends coming
Right.
over and, saying, hey, why don't you just sleep on the couch, They obsess about these sleepovers with
I'm
these kids.
laughing because we just finished a week of being together. There were 38 of us. And let me just interject here. I did not obsess over having a kid sleep over my bed with me. Believe me.
Right.
At the end of the day, I'm exhausted. Did I have fun with them? Yes. They were a great group, 25 grandkids, great group. But when you see someone picking out one or two as the favored children,
As
and
my children,
as
my buddy,
children,
my friend.
Yep. This is my little buddy. This is my best friend. This is my little girl. This is my little princess. And go off on walks together alone, invitations to eat privately alone, and then invitations to shelter that child because that child seems to be lonely.
Yeah.
And invite them into your bed, into your
But
home.
not just the invitation, and this is where it's
It's
really
ins-
important. The need.
ins-
You need to.
yeah.
You
Yep.
need to come over sometime
Yes.
and just hang
Yes.
out. Just you and me.
Yes.
We'll hang out. We'll chalk the sidewalk, and I have all kinds of yard games and
telling parents that
Yeah.
you need to let me spend time with your child. I see loneliness in your child. I see some depression. I see your child isn't fitting in quite as
Yeah.
the other kids do. I can help.
Yeah.
I can help.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
with these sleepovers, which are just so whacked out. Stop and think about this. It's so bizarre. I have young children.
Yeah.
In a million lifetimes, I would never invite any of their friends for a sleepover.
With you. Yeah.
Right, and with me, and post pictures online of me cuddling on the couch with my kids. It's so sick.
And yet, we tend to gloss over when we see this. It's like it doesn't register.
Yeah. Oh, isn't that sweet?
Because all of these previous things have been shown to us. These previous fruits, and
That's right.
Jimmy
That's
would
right.
never.
He's a great protector.
Jimmy would never have bad intention. I know that. And look at him with his own kids. Look how great he is. And after all, my kids do need this extra
They need
attention.
cuddle time. Yeah, they need. Yeah. So, guys, stop.
Step back. I
and
like your
think about
idea
this.
of taking the knife and just separating your emotions.
Absolutely.
Step
You have
back
to.
and look at the facts.
Yeah,
Split open the fruit and really look at it.
Grown A double ampersand men don't need to be cuddling with other people's little children on the couch in their house.
And we
or
know
having
women
sleepovers.
have I think of
That's true.
Some of the women we've interviewed.
That's exactly right. Women don't need to be doing it either.
No.
And again, I say men. The majority are
excuse men. Yes.
The majority of pedophile abusers are male, but there are certainly a significant number of females too. So when I say men, that does include women as well.
I think of Lauren Book, and I read that story and just sobbed through it. Through it.
Her nanny,
classic
female nanny.
example of
horrific
all of this.
abuse.
Yeah,
Yep.
Classic.
So again, here we go. Most people see this, this sheltering and sleepovers and that kind of stuff. They see it as hospitality at its greatest, but the wolf uses it as an opportunity to isolate children and turn his home into the devil's playground. Any attempt to resist is controlled not by the parent, but by the wolf. And so the parent will say something like this: "No, I don't really allow my kids to participate in sleepovers." And the wolf will respond something really close along the lines of this: "I'll be there to watch your little sweetie," or more likely, my little sweetie. "She's safe with me. It'll do her good, and it'll build her self-confidence to spend the night away from home anyway." And the parent will eventually respond something like this: "You're so right. She is kind of clingy," or he. She or he is so clingy. "I'm really worried about her. Thank you so much for caring. You're the only person that has ever taken the time to really care about her." And there you just fell right into that trap.
You got it.
And the abuser, at this point, is euphoric in his own mind.
I think of our friend Dave, who spoke openly about what happened to his daughters. This is a classic example of what happened.
And in private conversations that I had with him, he kept saying, "How could I be so stupid? How could I let my daughters spend the night at your dad's place when he was a bachelor, living in his own apartment?" He's like, "What in the world was I thinking?" And
what I was thinking
you were manipulated every single corner.
Every which way. That man.
And eventually you caved. He found every vulnerability that you had.
Right.
And eventually you were like, "Oh my goodness, well, this would be good for my kids."
The trap was already being set when the moment they met in church.
Yeah. So it's not the parents' fault. No, it's the abuser's fault.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
So then the final fruit for this episode, parenting. He feels, again, a need to be a surrogate parent. He or she, the abuser, will become the parent the child never had. He obsesses about spending time with children in a vicarious parenting role. While, again, these things combined are very important, while at the same time talking about the absence, the busyness, or the incompetence of their biological parents.
Right.
This goes back to the put down.
It does, absolutely.
Even if a wolf is sexually abusing his own children and is eventually caught but not imprisoned, He will manipulate every person he can in order to sue for full custody of his own children, the very ones he's abusing, because he's the ultimate parent. He's the most fit parent. And they position themselves this even with their own children when they're found out, but not imprisoned. We see this over and over and over and over again.
Thinking of a precious friend of mine that I went to church with, and this happened to her with her 5 children. And the husband did get custody.
Often they do.
Yeah.
And this is the stuff
so
that courts
tragic.
need to be trained on.
So tragic. Yes. So tragic.
Yeah. The getting full custody of the kids he's abusing, it becomes an obsession. And he will always paint the mother as an incompetent, harmful person. He will not stop until he is won. And parents, listen to this. If you know that your children are being sexually abused, or abused in any capacity, really, if you know that they're being abused by that other parent, don't ever think to yourself, eventually he's just going to give up, or she's going to give up trying to file for full custody. They never stop until they win. So you fight for those
with
children.
Everything. Yes,
you fight with,
yes.
that's right,
Yeah.
everything that's inside of you. And so here, I'll finish this paragraph up. He also parents other people's children by finding out the child's interests and will form a strong bond of friendship based on that child's interests. Again, very manipulative. It's not because he cares about what this kid is interested in. It's because he's manipulating himself to be the parent that kid never had.
Can I interject something here? Sometimes when we hear the word child, we think of only young 4, 5, 6-year-olds. This happens to teenagers.
Absolutely.
Also,
that's how they're
underage.
trafficked so
And
easily, too.
Exactly right. And parents who are frustrated with a teenager or whatever can't communicate well with them.
Which is typical, normal.
Very typical and very normal. You get the wolf who comes along, creates this friendship with that teenager, and a parent is ever so happy usually to say, go at it, you take them for the day, because I'm tired of it.
Yep.
I'm just
And
tired
so
of
that
the
person is
fighting
positioning themselves
perfectly.
with that kid
Yes.
as the parent that they never had.
Yes.
Think school teacher, think youth
Absolutely.
pastor, think guidance
Coach.
counselor,
Yes,
coach.
yes. And when you think like this, you think, well, how does the teenager get sucked into it? Very easily.
Extremely
because
easily.
when home is a battleground, what happens? They just want out.
They just want somebody
out.
who's going to be nice
Yeah,
to them, who's going to
just-
listen to them,
right.
who's going to understand them,
Yeah, take
who's
them out
not
for
going
a
to bark
treat,
at
go
them
to watch
for,
a movie,
they're not going
go
to yell at them for
hang
everything
out
they
and-
do,
yeah,
for having
right,
clothes on the
exactly
floor in their
right.
bedroom, and
Right.
you name it.
Exactly right, Jimmy.
Yeah.
Exactly right.
And the abuser knows this. He knows how to
Right.
single out the lonely, the forgotten, and the child that just doesn't fit in.
Right.
In the eyes of the child's parents, he's helping make their child shine. Mm-hmm. So again, it's that facade. So behind the scenes, this person is tearing down the parent, but then to the parent, he's like, my goodness, like, I'm here to catch your child when your child falls. Whatever it takes, I'll be there for your kid.
I can see certain things in your child that if they're not guided in the right direction, there's going to be problems down the road. I'm trained to help.
That's right.
And there we fall for it.
Every time.
Yeah, we do. We do.
Yeah.
Is that saying every counselor, every, Bible school teacher is, misguiding and evil? No. But combine, open these fruits.
All of them tell a story.
All of them
you
tell
start
a
to get this
story.
very clear
Right.
picture, and you're like, holy
Exactly.
cow,
Yeah.
this is not a safe
Exactly
person.
right. It helps, Jimmy, I think, to write it down on paper,
Yes.
too.
100%.
I've done that a lot of times. Put a line right down the middle and just put pro, con, what seems right, what doesn't.
Yep.
And when you add it up, you get a better picture that way.
I have a saying, I have a phrase. Math doesn't lie.
Right, exactly
and,
right.
And math is
right.
not.
You're right.
Math is not emotional. No.
No.
I've never seen numbers jump off a page and make me cry, and
Right.
like I've never seen
good.
arithmetic do
that's
that.
a good
math is
yeah.
actually quite boring and strategic in itself. And I just taught my kids just the other day. I taught them this really cool card trick. It is fascinating.
I
And
want to see it.
yeah, so
Yeah,
so
I'll
so
get the kids to
my
show me.
youngest, he's been practicing this. He's 7 years old. He's been practicing it because we're going to camp, and he wants to and it genuinely blows your mind. And when I first saw this trick, I was like, there is no way. And so the magic kind of gets taken out of this trick when you realize, well, it's statistics. That's all it is. It's flipping through cards in a certain sequence so many times that eventually takes that person's card, which you have no idea what it is. You legitimately don't. But it positions that card where that card becomes the 11th card in the stack. And then the rest is every time, 100%. It never will fail because statistics don't fail. They don't lie.
I love that. I love that. If we can remember
math doesn't
that.
lie.
Yeah, I love that.
And so that's the importance of writing this stuff down, because eventually 2 plus 2 has to equal 4.
Yep.
And if you're writing this stuff down and you're stripping your emotion from it, you're like, okay, holy cow.
Right. Exactly right.
There is a crystal clear picture. Maybe not that this person is an abuser. Unless there's evidence, I'm still not confident to say, you're an abuser. I'm not confident doing that. I think for a whole host of reasons.
But at least you will be aware and not hand your child over to that person.
And you can say, I can say without any hesitation whatsoever, I can point to somebody really quickly and say, that is one of the most unsafe people in this
there you go.
whole circle of people. That person is unsafe for these reasons. Here's the math.
There you go. I love that.
And it is not adding up.
I love that. Right.
If
you
not
don't
adding up to
remember
make this person
anything from
safe.
today's podcast except this, please try it. Write the stuff down.
Yes.
Write it down. Do the math.
Yep. Math does not lie. That sounds like Truth Bomb. Math doesn't lie.
There you go. I like that.
We'll leave you with that. Thank you for tuning into this episode. I hope these are incredibly helpful for you. And stay tuned for the next one. We have some doozies. By the way, some of you may notice or you may not, we will be wearing the same clothes. We're hitting out a couple episodes in a row because for the third time this month, I'm actually going to be away. I'll be not out of state, but I'll be out of town.
Right.
I'll be far away for
Yes, you
next
will be.
week.
Yes,
So
you will. Yeah.
we're pre-recording for next week so that we don't kind of miss out, and we want you guys to hear these. So anyway, thank you guys, and we'll catch you next round.
Thanks again for listening to today's episode. A special thank you to our patrons who make this podcast possible. Please help us get the word out by searching for the Speaking Out on Sex Abuse podcast in your favorite podcast app. Be sure to hit subscribe and rate the show. Please consider supporting the podcast by becoming a patron and check out the rewards our patrons receive.